All right, theory two. So at the time of this video, we had a clinic yesterday, and the end of the year is always chaotic. So what I'm thinking is, in this particular case, I'm going to go through the worksheets. I think you should have done these in class, but I'm going to do them just to be double sure. Hopefully you have a way to print these out, or maybe you can just make notes. But this next week we have our last class together, and I'm just going to make it an open notebook test. It's been a little bit chaotic, but I'd like it to keep moving somehow, before you guys break for summer. So we should at least get through some inversion work. So without further ado, let's go into Unit 13. So an inversion, as it would suggest, the notes are rearranged where the tone other than the root is the bottom note of the chord. Let me see if I can. Like I say in class, anytime there's an uppercase word of vocabulary, that's going to be fair game for a test. And it's a good word for you to know, period. See, that's a little, see if I can get a little bit more transparent there. There you go. That's more like it. So right here, they took the chord of C and they put the root in the top. Now, here's the thing about inversions. When we learn inversions, yes, you'll learn them in closed position, which we're going to talk about in a second. But really, it's all about what the bottom note is. In first inversion, the third is always the bottom note. So no matter what happens above it, right now you're learning just the basics, but as you study a score, maybe like a big band chart, some kind of orchestral thing, if you want to analyze this, you're just going off the bottom note. So if you know that it's a C chord and an E is the lowest note, it's a first inversion. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Oh, hey. Open and closed position. So vocabulary alert. Chord are spaced within an octave. It's called closed position, just like these. This one, and that one. But when notes are spaced larger than an octave, which will often happen in whenever you really start using this stuff in arranging, space larger than an octave. So we have the fifth with the third, they threw the third up here. This is a very powerful structure. You'll see this a lot in trombones and piano voicings. I think it has to do with the overtone system, but it's a very big sounding chord. And sometimes if it's in the low voice and you have a triad, it can get a little muddy. So that's a very common trick they'll do is they'll take the third, they'll flip it up. But because the root is still the lowest note, it is root position. So same deal here. This is a C chord, C over E, E being the lowest note, first inversion. All right. Closed position, open position. All right, so now they're going to ask us to rewrite the root position triads in open position. So we're not going to overthink this. We're just going to take the middle note. Right, and then I'm just going to, what am I doing here? So I wanted you to see that. Ugh, sorry, guys. Go up to there. See if I can clean this up. And I have the advantage of the iPad, so I'm going to kind of use that to, well, maybe it's good for you to see how I do it. Again, not overthinking it. I take this, and then I'm going to take the A, and that's going to require a ledger line. So boom, there you go. Same deal here. I'm going to keep this, move this up an octave, so this is going to take 2 ledger lines. All right. Using the given notes as the root, add the third and the fifth below each note to make the first inversion. Okay, so they're just kind of working backwards. Here's a trick when you're starting to try to identify things. So if you notice, a closed triad root position is just going to be thirds. But let's say you see a triad that has a third and a fourth. The dead giveaway of where the, at this stage of the game, I know it can get more complicated, but we'll leave that for later. Let's just assume now that they're just going to be giving you triads, basic triads. Like this isn't going to be a sixth chord or some kind of something out of the ordinary. We're just doing the basics. In that context, wherever the perfect fourth is, or whatever kind of fourth, I should just say fourth. That's going to tell you that the note that's higher is the root. So, for example, here I know E is going to be the root, so it would be E, G, B. So that's what I'm going to add below. Now these are pretty repetitive, so I'm just going to kind of keep adding these guys. So again, it's like when you have, if I put the third, like if I have my triad C, E, G, and I move this C to the top. Sorry guys. Still getting my iPad tricks together. Oh, come on now. There we go. I'm not looking at the quality right now. I'm just kind of looking at it visually. We're just going to call it a third. We're not going to worry about if it's a major or a minor third. We're just going to call it a third. This is a fourth, third. So that's the key. You kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm over explaining this, but it's a little trick. All right. I'm just doing this for sake of time so you can all see this. All right. Using the given notes as the third, add the fifth. All right, so they're just going to reverse it. So if we know that the third is the bottom note, and it is a, see, close, I keep playing closed. It's close position. I always thought, I guess, all right. Close position, so I guess meaning they're close together. So, so just as we figured out, when we know what the first inversion, it's going to be a third and then a fourth. Tighten that up. I know I get on everybody. Oh, this one requires a ledger line. There you go. Hey, how are you? I know this is not the most interesting stuff in the world. It's probably jamming and playing music's better, but this kind of stuff, it does help. Theory kind of helps speeds up your processing. It helps you look at music and see bigger patterns. Things that have already been kind of worked out. That if you could obviously learn this stuff on your own if you spend enough time, but if this has already been worked out, it just speeds things up. Which means less time it takes to figure things out. It's just a good way to organize your mind. So there's those. Let's keep moving. I'm going to kind of go fast, try to go as fast as I can. So we had root positions, first inversion. Second inversion means that they're going to invert it yet again. And guess what's the lowest note now? The fifth. See if there's any vocabulary here. Any first inversion may be inverted again, moving the lowest note to the top. Okay. Yes, that is the idea where it comes from. But in practice, it's always about what the bottom note is. All right. This is where the theory comes from. But in practice, like say, for example, here, it's all about what the lowest note is. Anything that happens above it is fair game. That's not where the name comes from. So it's all about with inversions. Even though they explained it by inverting it by taking the bottom note at the top, it's really a roundabout way to classify what the lowest note is. I'm emphasizing this a lot because this confuses people quite often. So sorry if I'm driving you crazy with the repetition. So, all right. What do we got here? All letter names the same, but the fifth is now at the bottom. Okay. I'm kind of moving through this. I mean, you're young adults. You can read. But so I'm kind of skimming this. I hope you don't mind. Root position. See, there you go. Boom. If you could summarize it all in like 3 lines, that's this whole unit. So, and then there's the good visual. And they kind of show where, like, if you keep, and there you go. There's the upper note of the interval of a fourth. So there's your trick. The root. So, it's good to know the theory in case so you know where this stuff comes from, but what it really comes from is like, wherever you see the fourth, there's the root. There's the root. I'll use the highlighter. We don't want to spend too much time thinking about this theory. What they say, I had a teacher that said, slow theory equals no theory. The whole point of theory is to help us move fast. It's not something that you explain to try and make yourself sound fancy around other people. It's something to help you process faster. All right, same drill here. Let's open these triads up so we know that this one's going to go up to here. Rewrite this guy. We have a ledger line. This guy's going to go up there. I'm just doing this for demo purposes. If you were to do this on a test, you don't have to really draw the arrow. I mean, I don't really mind it. It's not a huge deal, but you can just do this. Yas. Write the following root position triads in 2 inversions, closed position. Oh, and second position, second inversion. All right. So you see where they took the 2 notes and put them up top. So another way you can think about this is you put here, and if you remember, you go up a fourth, go up a third. Take the top note, go up a fourth, go up a third. What a mess. There we go. There we go. Okay. Using the given notes as the root, add the 5th below and the 3rd above. So what they mean is this gets mixed up with intervals. So someone might think like, oh, a 3rd above and the 5th below. So someone might add like a 5th below the actual note. There's a difference between intervals and chord tones. Intervals would be like, say, if I C, E, G, that'd be a minor third and a major third. Those are intervals. We're dealing with distance, right? When we're talking about scale tones, we're talking about root, third, and the 5th. So I don't know, to put it in an example, imagine like a baseball field. Chord tones are like, wherever you are on the field, like, well, there's first base, there's shortstop, there's the catcher, like, where like the different positions are, the different like, chord tones. An interval would be like, it's however long it is from here to first base. It's that distance. But the distance from right field to first base is going to be a different distance. So now intervals are, as the name would suggest, deal with like spaces. All right. So, and then chord tones. So in this case, when they're talking about the 3rd and the 5th, they're talking about chord tones. They're not talking about intervals. Hopefully that's more helpful than it is confusing. I know that might have sounded like a word salad, but here we go. All right, so we know that this is the root. We want the 5th to be below, so we know we go down a 4th. There you go, and there's that structure. It's going to be a 3rd above. There you go. Go down a interval of a 4th. It's an interval of a 4th. You might say 4th below, but this is the 5th of the chord. I know, not super interesting, but it's important to understand this jargon, if anything, just so you're not intimidated when people start using this language. If you never want to use this, if that's kind of your personality, like, I don't really, this stuff's kind of dorky, I'm not into it, still learn it just so, because there are the types of people that like to weaponize this stuff and try to make you feel like you're not as valid of a musician or knowledgeable. So I hope, so learn it anyways is what I'm getting at. Even if you don't ever plan to use these terms, just know it. Yas, there you go. Makes sense? Hopefully. I'm going to keep moving. Moving. All right. Now, this, gets a little dicey with 7th chords. because you have 4 notes as opposed to a triad which has 3 notes. So you have an extra inversion, 7th at the bottom, 5-7 chord. Basically what I said, root on the bottom, third on the bottom, fifth on the bottom. Very important. The inversions are all about what the lowest note is, full stop. The root always on the upper side. Okay, so we have to, you remember that rule we had about having the 4th well? If you see a 2nd, for example here, there, and there. So if you're trying to look at like a blob of chords, and you see like there's all thirds, and then there's like one that's like a 2nd, that's a hint that it might be a 7th chord. You know, not always, but it's a good bet. Just like if I'm looking at a blob of chords here, and I see that 4th, I know there's 3 notes, then I know that's some kind of triad. So these are all little tricks. All right, so write the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd inversions for these guys. All right, well, let's see here. What we do is we just put the root up top. How do they arrange it? How does this work? That's interesting. So, okay, so the double note should go to the left. Yes. All right, so to keep, again, I'm so used to software taking care of this stuff. Yeah, that's kind of how they're treating it. All right, and then, yeah, man. Is this going to work if I try to rearrange? Actually, it's probably better for these first couple ones. You kind of see what I'm doing. So what I'm doing is, you know, maybe here's another. I'll tell you what. I'm not going to lose sleep if you do that. I don't know if it's proper. I don't know if it isn't. As long as it's like what we don't want, and do not do this. Do not do this kind of stuff where they're just lopped on each other. Like that just looks like a mess. So whether you draw it like this or this. See, let me change my yes, yes, no. All right, so just as long as there's a 2nd, they need to be, something's got to give. They can't be just lobbed on top of each other. All right. 2nd inversion. I always use like, I don't know if you guys know Karate Kid, but there's that thing with Mr. Miyagi where it's like, you know, wax on, wax off, you know. He's like all this stuff that at the time he doesn't understand why he's teaching him this stuff. He thinks like, oh, this guy's just making me paint the fence and polish his car and all that kind of stuff. But he's kind of teaching him, it's a roundabout way to teach him the techniques like, hey, here's a block, here's this kind of stuff. Same principle here. Even if you don't understand why we're making you do this, just do it. It'll make sense at some point. I promise you. Oh, what am I doing here? That's why you always want to do theory in pencil. Some of you guys will, I understand if you only have a pen, but it's a real drag. Because I have a master's degree in this stuff, and you see how many mistakes I'm making. So, you know, don't be a hero. Don't be afraid to use pencil. So, okay. So. Yeah, and I know I'm writing this, I might be writing that incorrectly. Just, someone corrects you, just throw me under the bus. Say, well, Mr. Hornbeck showed me wrong, and, you know, I'll take the blame. Alrighty. All right, so, all right, indicate the inversions of the following. So we are looking for the seconds. So, oh wait, that's, oh, green, interesting. All right. Yellow, there we go. So remember, the top note of the 2nd is the root. So we know that that's the root. This is the 7th, the 5th, the 3rd. So if the 5th's in the bass, it is 2nd inversion. There's the root, which means this is the 7th. third inversion. So root, 7th, 5th, 3rd. Third's the lowest note, that's first inversion. I'm trusting if you want to like go along with this stuff. I mean, maybe I don't have to say this out loud, but obviously you can always like pause this stuff. I know some people on YouTube are like, I'm going to pause the video for a second so you can check it out. I mean, you know, you can pause this and work this out, or maybe you tried doing this worksheet, any of these worksheets beforehand before I walk through them. If you want that challenge, which you can get something from it, but I also understand it's the end of the year, time is limited. So, you know, I'm trying to move it along. So if you want to pause, I'll leave that up to you. But otherwise, I'm just going to kind of blow through these. So this is the root, 7th. So that's third inversion. 7th is the lowest note. We found our second. So if I go root, 7th, 5th, 3rd. 3rd is the lowest note. All right. Root, 7th, 5th. 5th is the lowest note, so that is going to be second inversion. Cool. And, you know, let me just double check. I know I'm moving fast. And when I move fast, I make mistakes. Yes, second inversion, third inversion, first. Yep, we're good. Looking good. Write the following 7th chords in the given inversions. The bottom note is given. Add the accidentals where needed. Ooh, okay. All right, so this is where it gets a little interesting. Let's not worry about the notes first. Let's just get the dots, and then we can come back and like deal with the accidentals after the fact. So, all right, so we know that's the 3rd. So let's put the 5th, the 7th, and then to the side of it. Or if you so desire, you could do this. That's fine too. Either or. I'm going to do that because, I don't know, it's probably fine. You know, I could see the idea where like maybe they want you to see the triad and you're adding the 7th. So let's say like this is the second inversion, the 5th. So I'm going to go up here. Here's the root. There's the 3rd. So you can clearly see the triad. And then you add the extra note, which is the 7th. So maybe that's the reasoning behind it. I'll look it up another day. Don't have time today. 3rd, 7th, so 5th, 7th. I did it again. So I'm going to see. So that would be a, okay, we're in bass clef. All right. This is going to be on top of that. And then the C is going to be over here. 7th's in the bass, so let's do this. Second inversion, so the 5th's in the bass. So I'm going to put the root, the 3rd, and then add the 7th. Root, 3rd, 7th. You know, I'm not expected to be this fast with it. It really is just reps. It's just like math, sports, playing music. A lot of this stuff is just, you just got to rep it, which is why I torture you with a lot of these homework assignments, because as much as I'm sure you'd rather be doing other stuff, that's the only way you really get good at these things. You just have to rep it. All right, so did they talk? Yes, we did cover dominant 7ths. Probably God, we had 2 weeks off from spring break. Well, 1 week for spring break, 1 week for testing, and then it's just been a whirlwind. So we're gonna do a crash course here. So what you do with a dominant 7th is you have a major triad, and then you add a minor 7th. Or another way you could look at it is root, 3rd, 5th, you know, major 3rd, I should say, perfect 5th, and then flat the 7th, which is a minor 7th. I'm a jazzer, so we just go like 1, 3, 5, flat 7. That is the worst looking 3. Oh my goodness. Clean up aisle 5. There we go. So I'm just going to go through this quickly because I don't want the video to get too long. So this is going to be C, E, G. A natural 7th would be B, so we're going to flat that. So we're going to go back here, flat the 7th. All right. A7, let's start off with the triad. A, C sharp, E. G sharp would be the major seventh. Again, I'm thinking of the key of A. So first note, third note, fifth note, seventh note. We need to flat the seventh, so we're going to get rid of that natural. So all we got to do here is just add a sharp for C. D7, all right, D, F sharp, A. The seventh note of D is going to be C sharp. We lower that to a C natural. I'll put that here to kind of, so what do we got here? So we don't need this anymore. F sharp, so we're good. They already took care of the F sharp. C7, well, we already worked that out. C, E, G, B flat. They already took care of the B flat. Everything else is natural. We're good to go. And with these kind of things, I know in music that if you're reading a music left to right with measures, that the accidental resets stays constant until the next measure. With this, it's it's theory worksheets. So like you teach, you treat each stack as its own thing. So we don't have to I don't have to put a natural in front of this to cancel out this sharp, is what I'm getting at. That may have not crossed your mind, but I've had that question before. So in case that was you, there's the answer. A, F, C, E would be the major seventh. So to flat it, we're going to make that an E flat. There's your E flat. On with our day. D7, D, F sharp, A, C sharp, but we're going to change that to it. We're going to flat it to C natural. So all we need is an F sharp. There you go. It's a bit of a whirlwind, but we're getting through it. Figured bass. Oh man, what a doozy. What a doozy. We're going to cover it anyways, just in case, because this stuff can seem, it's intimidating at first until you really break it down. But it does take some time to get used to it. So yeah, it comes from the Baroque period. If you were gigging in the Baroque period, like Bach or any of those guys, Bach's going to different churches. He's improvising a lot of this kind of stuff. All he's seeing is like a bottom note and like a chord. And like he was regarded being a great improviser. So back then they did figured bass. It's a little, I understand that like a lot of colleges now are considering this outdated. They're not really teaching theory this way anymore, but there are worse things in the world than you knowing a little bit about figured bass, just in case you come across it, especially if you're in the classical world. If you're in pop and jazz, you're probably not going to see this much outside of theory. All right, so they talk about all these different things. So the inversion. So there's a thing you could put next to a one chord. One chords are in the key of C, 6/3. So what they're yes, what we were talking about, we have the chord tones. Those are like, first bass, second bass. Those things are always like, wherever you're standing, that's first base. That's third base. That doesn't change. Now, your distance to that can, like depending if you're sitting in, you're watching the game from center field or you're behind the batter's box. Your distance from first base might be different. So the interval can be different, but what it is, in this case, like a chord tone, stays the same. So the root is going to be a root in the C chord. It's always going to be a C. But then you have intervals. So we measure, so where the 6 comes from is you have an interval of a third and then an interval of a sixth. All right. So people are like, man, how do I remember this? Well, if you can draw a first inversion chord, that kind of gives you the answer there. All right. You can see that all right, that's a third and that's a sixth. You're measuring from the bottom note. And that's basically what I said there. You can read that if you want. They might say it better than me. Boom, there it is. Second inversion, 6/4. The key of C. So same principle. If you just look at the shape of it, they saw like, okay, there's your fourth, there's a sixth. So they call it a 1/6/4. And then talking about lead sheets, like say we knew this was a C chord. If we know that E is in the bass, so B, that's the chord, and then C, E is the lowest note. Here, G is the lowest note. This is a lot more common, but even though this is a bit outdated, it does kind of get you thinking about deep structures. And even though we notate a little bit differently in jazz guitar, or like if you're on a recording session in Nashville doing country music, they all have their ways of like talking about the deeper structures. They may not write the actual like, hey, C over E. They might write 1/3, or if it was classical, it's like, oh, it's a 1/6 chord, you know. Oh yeah, so we kind of glazed over that. So why don't they call it a 1/6/3? Well, because they just kind of got rid of the 3 over time. It's kind of an engineer's spirit. It's like, how efficient can we make the notation, right? Same deal here. So, you know, this is always confusing at first. So this is like the raw, you could figure this out by looking at it. They're telling you, they're not saying anything that you don't already know. You can see that that's, all right, a third, a fifth, a seventh. All right, this is a third, a fifth, and a sixth, right? So on and so forth, a fourth, a third. They're all measuring from the bottom note. But over time, they wanted to eliminate redundancies, because imagine if you're like having to handwrite all this stuff back in the day. It's like, God, man, we know it's a seventh. If there's a seventh, it's the only one of these, of any of these inversions that has a seventh, would be a root position seventh chord. So I think that kind of thinking, which without going too deep into it, they they figured they could eliminate things to make the notation as efficient as possible. So here's a trick you can do though, if you're trying to remember for seventh chords, what is the order? So you just do a countdown: 4, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and that changes a little bit: 4, 2. So, you know, maybe put the 4 in parentheses. Let's see here. If I see it's a seventh chord, I'm trying to remember what the figured bass is, then I can see, okay, for root, I can write that countdown: first inversion, second inversion, third inversion. I know, it's a lot. It's a lot. Just let it wash over you. I know it's our last week of class. You're going to go for summer. You're probably not going to remember this stuff. But hopefully, because you're seeing this stuff, it means the next time you see it won't be the first time you've seen it. And maybe it'll be a little bit easier to learn the next time you review this. So that's kind of where I'm coming out with this. All right, that's another little note too. What we got? Chord symbols are written above the staff. Numeral symbols are written below the staff, like so. Now, this is where it's good that we're doing an open notebook test. I do not expect you to memorize this stuff. This is stuff, I mean, I was doing figured bass for 4 semesters in college, and then even like form analysis after that. So it takes a while to get this. I don't expect you to get it in a week. It's okay to look at your other sheets, but it is good to kind of start using this stuff. So let's kind of before we kind of get into the chord symbol and the figured bass, let's just figure out what the inversions are here. So we got first inversion. Ugh, if I could write first. First inversion. Again, I'm looking, where is the third? The third is the lowest note, right? You just kind of memorize that shape. If you don't know what the root is, remember we were saying with triads, where is the fourth? Well, the higher note of the fourth is going to be that. So, and I can go ahead and start working ahead for the chord symbol. So if I know we're in treble clef, that's going to be some kind of F. It's going to be some kind of G. Same deal here. There's the fourth. So F is the upper note of that fourth. So it's going to be some kind of F chord. This is going to be some kind of C chord. Right? There's your root. It's going to be some kind of G chord. Now, it might be easier for us just to think of like, well, what's that bottom note? Well, that bottom note is an A. So this is going to be an F over A. This is going to be a G over B. Man, I cannot write today. F over C. Again, like whatever the lowest note is what goes on the bottom of the slash. So it's like F with a C in the bass, E with an C with an E in the bass, G with a D in the bass, right? Now here's where it gets a little tricky. We know we're in the key of C. So we know that, so if we write out our C scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. There's your 1. I'm going to go ahead and do Roman numerals to kind of get us in that 4 chord, 5 chord, right? So let's just go with that much. So this is going to be a 4 chord, 5 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord, 5 chord. All right. At this point, now that we already figured out what the inversions were, this was second inversion, first inversion, second inversion. So let's go back up and just see how we, all right, first inversion was a 6, second inversion was 6, 4. So we'll just type it again. If this doesn't make any sense, don't worry about it. Just wax on, wax off. Just go through the motions. Just trust. And then, it took me, even after knowing these figured bass symbols, it was like a while of me writing them out before I actually made the connection and it really started to click for me. But, if I had waited till I had understood all that stuff, then, it would take me too long to get started. Sometimes it's better just to get started. So there we go. All the second inversion have 6, 4. The first inversion have 6s. All right, let's do this guy. We're in the key of C, so I'm just going to move this down here. What do we do? Let's figure out where the roots are. I'm going to kind of change the order. So we know there's no second in here, so that's going to be that there's your root. Top note of the second is always the root, so we know that this is going to be, they already told us they're all 7s, so I'm just going to put G7. That's also G7. Okay, these are all going to be G7s. I guess that would make sense because G is the 5, which would be a dominant 7th. So, okay. So this is root. This would be, if I zoom in on this guy, root, 7th, 5th, 3rd. So if the 3rd's in the lowest note, that is a first inversion. Root, 7th. 7th's in the bass, that is 3rd inversion. Now, if you remember, I would be surprised if you did because you literally learned it just 5 seconds ago. If it's the first time you saw it, right? Let's do the countdown. So 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. You kind of have to remember the 4, 2. That is a little bit of a memorization, but hopefully memorizing one thing's a lot easier than having to memorize like all the other junk, right? Just brute memorization. So we know that root position, that's going to be our 5, 7. First inversion, if you remember, after 7, they all work in 2s. So if we know that's a first inversion, that's going to be a 5, 6, 5. And if you want to double check, you see there's a 6, there's a 5th and a 6th, a 5th and a 6th. If we went over here, you can see there's a 7th. So if I was like wanting to double check and say, oh, well, that's a 5, 7 chord, you would need to, like, we'll say if I was thinking it was a 5, 7. Well, if you look at the answer, you see that there's no 7th. That should be a clue that this is incorrect. All right. So I guess the idea there being that, these numberings, even though they seem random, they are pretty matter of fact in terms of how they relate to just like, hey, man, we're just describing what we're looking at here. And, we've covered intervals this quarter. This is kind of where we really start using that intervals to help us out. And then we knew this was going to be 3rd inversion, so that's going to be a 5, 4, 2. And let's just double check. There's a 2, and there's a 4th. How are we doing on time? Oh, 40 minutes. I try to make these as fast, but it really does take time to get through these guys. It's a lot of work. Major scale progressions. Oh, man. I'm making an executive. I'm going to work this out, but I think this might be too much for for try to get through 1 week. So the idea of smooth voice leading is, imagine each one of these notes is a voice. You don't want you want the singer to have to sing all over the place. If they can stay on the same note, even better. That's kind of the essence of smooth voice leading. So here is a chord progression that's not voice leading. Oh, there's your vocabulary, by the way. Chords that move or progress from one to the other are called chord progressions. Sorry, let's put this guy. To accompany, play along with, and again, all the uppercase stuff is fair game. Because one shall contain all the notes of the major scale they can use to accompany. All right, so they're just saying like you can get a lot of work done with 1, 4, 5. That's kind of the sentiment there. When they are all in root position, they sound choppy. And oh my God, I cannot slowly get my penmanship together. Root position progressions sound choppy. To make it easier to play the sound smoother. So we are using inversions to cut down on how much movement. So yeah, they're talking about these inversions. They kind of did the work for you. Maybe it's easier rather than they can walk you through why they did that. But really the idea is a C chord is going to have C, E, G. A 4 chord is going to have F, A, C. The idea is, okay, well the C can stay the same. The E can move to F. G can move to A. So everybody is moving. It's all about efficiency. Voice leading is like efficiency. So what's the least amount of distance each voice can move to achieve that collection of notes, right? And then they do the second inversion. First inversion, same deal here. They if we had a C, E, G, and we want to go to a G chord, which is G, B, D, well, the G is the same, so we're going to keep that the same. E can smoothly move down to D. C can smoothly move down to B. All right, that is the crash course. And if you wanted to add the 7th, they just kind of throw it in there, right? And as you can see, there you go. I think on the other page they were, let me just double check so I know I'm not crazy. Yeah, so you kind of see on the first inversion where they were like, or no, wait, what would it have been? Yeah, I think that's right. So they were putting the roots there so you could see the triad. But if we go to in the wild, it's still a stack. It's, so it's, just to reiterate, I'm not crazy. All right. So, all right. Write the chords in root position, write the chord. All right. So we're in the key of G. Let's start off with a good G triad, root triad. You just go up here and see, okay, when you go to the next chord, it's going to be second inversion. I mean, don't overthink this stuff. It's just going to take too long to understand it. If we're just trying to get through the assignment, just trust what they're doing. So G, B, D. The 4 chord would be C, E, G, and that's what happens there. We have a G, we have a G, we have a C and an E. And then that goes back down to your root position. Going to the 5, if we remember that we kept the 5 note, I don't expect you to memorize it. I'm just kind of showing you how this can look when you're fast with it. There you go. And 5, 7. So that would be, this would be a 5, 6, 5. Again, first inversion, 6 and a 5th, 5th and a 6th. Or this would be a 6. An interval of a 6th. First inversion. Don't worry about memorizing it. If you go back and look at this 400 times with your cheat sheet, you'll just start to memorize it. Aim for that. Don't beat yourself up if you don't memorize this. It takes a while. All right. Rewrite the progression, make it sound. Oh yeah, we forgot to write chord symbol for each. All right, so this can be a G chord. This is a C chord with G being the lowest note. G chord. D chord with an F sharp, lowest note, or it can be a D7, F sharp, lowest note, G. All right, am I going crazy? Oh, you know what? This is what happens when I go into a rush mode. But thankfully, we have the iPad. If you did that along with me, you're kind of, maybe you just have to flip-flop. But I did this part quickly. And they already did all the work. So I was making it way harder. It's almost like the people that wrote this theory book had your best interest at heart. All they want is they want root position triads. So for this first one. So C, G, D, and then I'll just write this one out. All right, and then they wanted you to do the make it sound smoother. So sorry, did it backwards. But the good news is for these, the chord symbols are a lot easier because they are root positions. So they just give them the name. There you go. All right, we'll write a chord symbol for each. Write the chord. All right, so I'm just going to do this. We're in bass clef. So F, B flat, F, C, or C7, Euro, and then F. All right, buddy. Write the F, B flat, C7, F. Rewrite the progression to make it smoother. All right, so we're going to start off with I just realized I had my sound turned off. Hopefully my shoulder hasn't been hitting that microphone too much. How about now? How about now? There we go. Okay. So going to this guy. Oh, this is where the smooth voice leading comes in. Now they already spotted you. You know 6/4. So if you know it's going to be a second inversion, right? So the F, A, C, B flat, B flat triad. So if we know it's going to be this equals second inversion, which means F is going to be our lowest note. Go up a fourth, go up a sixth. There you go. This would be B flat over F. B flat chord with an F. B flat chord with an F in the bass. Go back to our one chord, nice, easy peasy. F chord, good old garden variety F triad. All right. The 5 chord is going to be C, E, G. Let's go ahead and add B flat because we're going to need to do a 7th chord. But let's do the triad version. So 6 means that the 3rd is going to be in the bass. So let's put E here, and then we'll just build it from there. Also do. We don't have to worry about the accidentals because we already have a key signature. So no need to write this. The key signature takes care of that. And then back to F. All right, that's a lot of stuff. I would normally try to review for the test. Maybe I'll make a separate video. It doesn't really apply now because I just want you to focus on the worksheets. If you have a way to print them out or whatever, you know, maybe just kind of just watching this will help you be aware. So when we come in Thursday, you know, I'm not trying to remember if I even handed out sheets at this point. So if not, I'll give everybody hard copies and then we're just going to work through the test. We'll have that and then whatever homework assignments. I think there was some musictheory.net assignments that were also due. So that's going to be our final, let's say. It's an open notebook thing on Unit 13. I'll be there to help you. Hopefully you'll look at this video ahead of time so you kind of have an idea. You can have some questions already prepared so we can just hit the ground running and go on Thursday. So we'll see how it goes. I hope you all have a nice weekend. Take care.